Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you for joining us. If you have a chance and you feel like you want to, hit the subscribe button in our YouTube channel and do all those fun little things. And if you have a chance also to leave us a review, that would be helpful. There's a link down in the show notes below. If you could do that, that would be wonderful.
And definitely engage with us with our Facebook group. We've had a lot of new people just join our Facebook group.
New school year.
Yeah, new school year. Welcome. And this is a great place to post questions or things you're struggling with, or I'm just going to put it out there, successes. If you've had a day where something just went great and you had some breakthrough, like share and we'll celebrate with you. Yeah. Sometimes it's nice to have a few nuggets in the feed of like, yay, somebody's having an awesome day. So I love to see that stuff too. So yeah, definitely interact with us. We love to see your posts on the Facebook group.
So today is the part 2 to last week's were the benefits of homeschooling. We've been talking about this. Last week we kind of focused a lot on the benefits to the student, and today we're going to be talking sort of the benefits to the parents, because in this homeschool equation, when you balance the equation, parents are part of this equation, and your enjoyment and being able to enjoy the experience and go through all these types of things and not feel burnt out and all this. The negatives that can come sometimes, making sure that you're fulfilled and you're meeting your needs and the values and whatever those things are for you as a parent will make it a better, enjoyable experience that you can wake up every day and be excited to come to.
I think it's really funny that we're recording this right now because we spent about the last hour and a half dissecting this week of homeschool and talking about how frustrated you feel and how busy and how unfulfilled and all these negative things, because it's been a really hard week and we're like brainstorming how to deal with kids who are being uncooperative and
just optimizing the schedule
and
all that
a
stuff.
Schedule that's too busy and a child who's very emotional about things and shutting down, and you've been just like venting for like at least the last hour and a half as we went to record this. So all this to say that it's nice to have an episode like this where we can kind of, even on a day when we're kind of having a crummy day, y'all, we can refocus on, there are really a lot of benefits, and it's really good to remember those things, especially on days that are hard, because there is a reason why we do this for our kids, but also for ourselves. And, to know like this too shall pass. So let's remember the good things. Let's focus on the good today, because it helps carry us through those just difficult days.
Well, and if you think about it, you want to juxtapose this frustration, we were just chatting about, if you were in a situation where you could not control your schedule, being the first thing we want to talk about is greater control over your schedule. We're talking about the frustrations, but we're not talking in the structure of, there's nothing we can do, right? Oh, we got to go talk to the teacher. Oh, we got to go do this thing. Yeah. And you have this bureaucracy you're fighting. I am the bureaucracy.
Right. And we can choose to scale back whenever we want.
What's amazing is that we're talking about challenges, and hey, it's okay to have challenges. There's no way homeschooling is going to be smooth. There's going to be rocks and bumps. Not easy. And nothing's easy. And everything has its challenges. And homeschooling is just another one of those things that you're going to have challenges. But the kind of the cool wrinkle that maybe the silver lining of what we were talking about is we weren't just talking about the complaints and the issues. We were trying to pose solutions that we can change next week. And that's kind of that flexibility you get with homeschool, is that you have the freedom to say, hey, this isn't working. Let's look at our schedule. Let's look at what we're doing. We just ordered 2 new workbooks.
Yeah.
It's like, like these are the things that we can do. And that's so cool about homeschooling is that, you can make adjustments and pivots. If something's not working, you can make it work or find something else that might work, or try it again, try something new. and we're kicking ideas off and, giving us our, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? You do not have that freedom in some of the other options for education. And so for the homeschool wise, the first kind of thing that we think about from the parents' point of view is that you do get a lot of control over this schedule, and you get a lot of freedom to make changes and choices.
That means you can travel when you want. If you've been listening to us, we go on a big trip every year, and with the support of our parent partnership, they're fine about that. Our kind of public school co-op thing that we do.
We slip our teacher an extra 20.
No. And, I have the flexibility with my work. There may be times when I will travel for work. And if I have to go someplace for a week, I can take the family with me.
Yep.
I'm totally flexible. I don't have to be penned in by the school system. For those families who have a parent who works, some other kind of shift, like a nurse or firefighter, we know both of those. Yep. They love this flexibility. They come home and they're with their kids. And I think giving you the flexibility in your life, because there are other things that I don't get a choice. I do have to go to work every day. And so it's nice to have control over our family life and let that adapt. And for those parents who maybe you're not feeling it today, we know a parent with chronic illness. And so there are days he needs that flexibility for himself. And even if his child was in a school, that would mean that they would have to get up at a certain time, get her ready, get her lunch made, get her to the bus, do all these things, get her picked up, just all of those requirements that, there are days that he can't do that. And so it's really great to have the option to be flexible.
Yeah, it really brings that work-life balance into it. So the next thing, that kind of goes with this is the idea of strengthening the family bonds. And we were talking about kind of the frustration in the eyes of the learner, and how can we make decisions on our homeschooling and, even just in the trenches, right? How am I doing this thing right now? Or how am I doing this lesson? Can I be better at it? Can I improve the situation? Am I going to make a mistake that could cause her to start to not enjoy this? How can I make this more enjoyable? And by doing that type of really intensive paying attention of our children, it's not something that we would get in any other environment. Or I'm able to manage her emotions. I'm able to have a deeper relationship with her. I'm able to ask her pointed questions that she would never get very often. Like, I can look at her and say, what can I do to improve this? And asking those deep questions and getting feedback from the learner, I think really does kind of solidify a deeper bond with your child, because you are spending a lot of time with them, but also like sitting there and thinking about their emotions makes you, I think, a better person to help them in those situations. And by helping them through things that are challenging and giving them the tools to be able to handle that later, I think they begin to value that relationship. There's a lot more connection that's built along that way.
Yeah, I remember when COVID happened and everyone had to go home. We were talking with some friends, some neighbors, and they were saying, like, "Oh my gosh, we have so much more time together." Like, we didn't realize, because the kids were in school and then there were activities, and because of the way their schedule was, they just didn't really realize they were only spending, an hour a day or something with their children, and they really missed them. And it's awful, of course, that it had to take a pandemic for them to get to spend more time together. But we know several families coming out of the pandemic who purposely scaled back their activities and things because their kids were in school all day, and they really did miss that time together. For us, it was like, oh, we already spend all this time together. So it wasn't as much of a change. Obviously, there was a few things that we were doing that were no longer, they were canceled. But for the majority of it, we just get this gift of all of this time. And we get to prioritize things with them. When they need us, we're there. We can be there, and we don't have to be beholden to anyone. Even though we go to this school for our enrichment activities, we can just say no that day because we need to focus on our family. And I love that ability. It helps us, and one of the things you were talking about with, working with our daughter too, is we have the ability to collaborate with our learners and really find out what they need from us. And that makes our job way easier, and that collaboration also strengthens your bonds together.
I also like the idea that you don't let a bad situation fester.
Oh, I love that.
Right. Because, knowing that there's a bad situation going on, you can course correct in that moment, and you don't allow things to go for weeks or weeks. I can imagine, our oldest talks to you a lot better about her emotions than to me. I'm the lone wolf and the granite father. Being able to know when something isn't working earlier on, I think can save a lot of heartache and a lot of frustration, a lot of pain and emotional issues that you don't find out something like 2 months later that, oh my gosh, you've been having troubles in school. We had this issue. I mean, it's not as serious as like, behavioral problems or, violence or bullying or anything like that. But, we found that she was not understanding her dance class stuff.
Yes. Last year.
And we just, because I wasn't attending the class and she wasn't communicating it, and the teacher was not communicating, and we weren't really involved as much as we normally are because just kind of being a little hands off. We realized there had been an ongoing problem, and then we were able to course correct, now albeit at the end, but this rapid course correction right at the end was able to save her performance at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And it was really a kind of a revelation in like not allowing things to fester. And I think having a deeper connection, being able to be involved in the education on a daily basis, or, not all the time, but being present and being and participating, I think can save from something to begin to fester.
Yeah, well, and our kids really well. I mean, I work remotely a little bit too, so I'm home more than just the weekends. But because you're with them every day, especially, like you know them, the look in their eye, their tone of voice, when something's wrong. Even I can see, she says she's fine. It's funny because we were with your mom and dad, and there was a situation in which I said, "Oh, yeah, she's upset," and your mom's like, "Oh no, I put her to bed. She's fine. I'm like, I'm going to go up and check on her. And sure enough, she was very upset because we can tell because we're with our kids enough. We can tell, we know them very well. And, we waited so long to have these little humans. And I think it's such a joy that we get to be so close with them and get to know them so well.
Mm-hmm. Now, the next thing that I think is really beneficial for parents is this idea of, this personal growth. Something that I think a lot of parents will find is that along the way, you kind of find this, you reinvigorate your love for education. The interest, you kind of rediscover that youthful drive to learn. You'll be reading more books. I think you'll be studying the landscape of education more. You'll try to understand education in more deeper level. I think that's kind of like it's just kind of something that kind of goes under the radar that people don't talk about, that parents who homeschool, not everyone, it's not everyone if that's not you, but I find that I'm like more interested in what we're learning about. I'm trying to find additional information for myself so that I can be, I'm enjoying learning about these things too.
Yeah,
right?
I love to learn with our kids.
Yeah, and we've made suggestions in our vlog for parents to read books along the way as well that are, ancient civilizations or around the world, if you want to like read a novel or something that's set in that area. So you can kind of go along with your children in that experience. I find that to be just, it's almost something like you want to do. And it's kind of something that I've discovered over time is that you feel like you want to be part of that educational experience, not the facilitator of it.
Yeah, I love learning with our kids. I love the journey and diving into like, I don't know. We love to cook together. So as we're doing these different countries for this Trekking the Globe, it's like, I love making the food and tasting it. And I love watching movies about different cultures. And when we were doing Ancients, I was reading some books as well. And I love learning alongside them. I think that is such a huge benefit to, I don't know. I mean, when we did prehistory, we both realized you're like, wow, There was a significant gap in our educations in your
Exactly.
private school one and my public school one of about like, I remember like Big Bang and then things crawled out of the primordial ooze and then dinosaurs. And it's like, well, there was a lot more to prehistory than all of that.
There
And
was.
I didn't know about that until we learned it with our girls. And I think that the discoveries that you make are so cool. I just think it's such a great benefit.
Another thing, part of that kind of personal development is it does give you the opportunity as a stay-at-home parent for some more entrepreneurial goals. We know a lot of people who do kind of hobby farming or maybe do piecemeal work or hobby work has become their profession, and that gives them some more opportunities to be home in order to cultivate those, because dirty little secret, homeschooling does not take 8 hours a day like the public and private schools. And so you are afforded additional time to maybe put some effort into a hobby that you've been passionate about or wanting to do, some home-based business or something of that nature. We've interviewed parents who have side businesses, a baker here or a farmer here, and you can do these things while also homeschooling that maybe you otherwise couldn't have done if your kids are going off to school and maybe you have to go get a regular day job and you don't have the time to make that hobby something bigger than what it might have been.
Yeah, there's a lot of parents with homeschooling that are able to kind of do that balance. They, maybe they work remotely or have some sort of job and they're also able to educate. So it's really great that it's flexible enough to allow them to work when they need to, and then they can school when they need to. And I think it's awesome. You can leverage your homeschooling experience. You could start tutoring. You can think about, teaching if you want to. You could leverage your experience into a humble podcast and YouTube channel. You should subscribe. There's opportunities, but I think it's fun because we have the time to sometimes to not this week to maybe pursue something and still care for our children.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next one is the kind of customizing your philosophy. You can really choose not just curriculums that are different ways of education. We've talked about a number of those before, but also just matching them with your values. Whatever is important to your family, incorporating that in.
Your culture,
your philosophies, whatever that might be. You have the freedom to be able to wrap that in to your education, make that kind of a cornerstone of what you're doing. And really be able to impart that information onto your children.
Right. Yeah. If you are just a real believer in experiential learning and you really want all that for your child, you don't have to find a school that's going to meet all of the exact, ways you want. You think it would be best for your child to learn, and maybe your family is just, we are an unschooling family. The whole family operates out. That's like our philosophy for life is that
everyone sleeps until 10:30, and that's just how we roll.
Sounds amazing. But like whatever it is that works for your family, you're able to, rather than being kind of shoehorned into this one size fits all, this is how everybody gets educated and that's how it goes. You can actually choose something that matches your style and that, helps your, bring your child up in the same style that the rest of your family is. And especially, if you know that you're in a family, like for me, I've struggled with anxiety for a long time and I can see some of those threads in our daughter. So us having a really relaxed homeschool style, I know is meeting her needs, and it's meeting the needs of the family, because if she was in public school and she was coming home with this homework and then we had to fight about it, I would be having anxiety every night and that would be bad for our family. So it's like, we can make sure that this matches what she needs, what we need as a family to keep our family environment harmonious for the most part.
Speaking of those pressures, there's a lot of philosophies out there about testing and standardized testing and pressure around homework. With being a homeschooler, you don't have to engage in those. I know there are a lot of states that will require standardized testing. Yeah. And so we know that's something that maybe we can't always avoid, but you can approach it in maybe a more lower pressure environment. Maybe you can train to it. Like that's something that I'm doing right now, knowing that in third grade here with our oldest, she'll get her first experience with a standardized test. It is optional at our school, but our school gets graded and funded, and we don't want to feel like we're
Yeah.
taking from the school. So we're gonna, and I also want to see if she can do the test
I
and
think
perform.
it's a good experience
And
to
so
have.
I'm beginning to slow walk training of testing and the testing experience, and trying to make it not be a foreign experience for her. She doesn't have to feel that pressure going into it. I'm going to make it very familiar to her. And I'm taking the time now over the next like 8 months to essentially prep her expectations
Yeah.
so that she is not terrified of taking this test.
Yeah.
And so these are things that we can do. And then obviously homeschooling, we don't have homework. We might
Yeah,
have
grades
we
and
have
things.
independent work, and maybe that is like the homeschool equivalent of homework. But independence is something that we're all trying to breed into the children and get them trained up to do. So taking that out of the environment where there's pressure and tests and all these types of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I do assessments all the time, and we do formal assessments. I give her, the math assessment, and she does it. And I give her some reading assessment, and she does it. But it doesn't have that, that pressure of like the test is coming this Friday, and the
Right.
the thing that we've all had to experience, that she doesn't have to deal with that here at the younger years. Maybe we'll do a little bit more of it when she's older, so she can get used to it and ready for it. But it doesn't have to be this negative experience, that you can take the time to make it more positive.
Yeah, I think in general, the stress that having a child in school and what things come home, whether that's, staying up all night on a Sunday night to help your child get their project done, as my mom had to do when I was younger, or, fighting with your kid every night. I mean, that was your childhood, your mom and your sister fighting every night about
it was a lot.
homework.
It was a
And
lot.
it just really hurt the whole family because it caused everyone so much stress. So you have these outside forces that you have these commitments that you have to meet, that you don't have choices about, and it causes stress for the family. And really it's not like it's just on the kids. That's on, it affects the whole family. It affects us if we have to help them with that assignment. And, sometimes those assignments are not well written, or there's too much work, or they're given at the last minute. I've known families who have had teachers give them major projects they had to complete over spring break. So now that family that had a vacation planned, that mom or dad is helping their kid get this project done, and they're all stressed about it. We avoid all of that extra stress. I mean, life is stressful enough, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to have extra imposed stress. So I think for me personally, that is a huge benefit for us.
Moving on to kind of the financial considerations of homeschooling, it is a cheaper route than, say, maybe if you don't want to go the public school route, you want to go private school. Private schools are expensive.
Yeah, they're very expensive.
There are some micro schools out there now, and those can be pricey as well. There are some states that are allowing funds to move to micro schools and charter schools. So there's becoming a more complex web of
It's true.
of education out there. But homeschooling in general, outside of the opportunity cost loss of the parent working,
Right.
which has its own cost in and of itself, but just the act of homeschooling is not that expensive. You can get
Yeah,
curriculums.
it's pretty cost
We
effective.
talk a lot of times about using online digital curriculums. We talk about math and reading curriculums that are not that expensive. They're workbook based.
Yeah.
There's a ton of resources at the local libraries. If you're lucky enough to have a parent partnership that has access to a ton of curriculum, that's
or
also
a
nice.
charter or co-op.
But also just making friends with other homeschoolers. You will maybe even be able to borrow, curriculum,
Totally.
using the library to leverage additional materials. There's so many resources out there that are, not necessarily free, but low cost. That makes homeschooling, I think a lot more doable for families who may have more of a constrained budget, and also the benefit of a parent being at home, or, in some respects, you could have like a grandparent that's doing the homeschooling as well.
Certainly could be.
If you have a family, kind of a family that has multiple age levels, parents,
Multi-generational.
multi-generational there with parents and children and maybe grandparents. The grandparents can be leveraged to do the homeschooling as well, so you don't maybe have both parents out working. The cost, I think, we've done a lot of talking about cost, and I know cost is a huge problem, especially with larger families. You got to start thinking about how can I save costs. We on our homeschool reviews on our YouTube channel. I've been reviewing a lot of curriculums where we have been able to get a hold of the online version of the curriculum so we can print it off multiple times. Again,
each student.
Ways to save money along the way, especially when you're considering having, 2 or 3. Sometimes at our parent partnerships, I see these battle wagons come walking in with all the curriculum. They got
crates and rolling in.
Mom's got like 4 or 5 kids, and I'm like, wow, that is a pricey option if you're doing custom curriculums and things, but there's a lot of ways to save costs. So homeschooling can be a way to save costs as well.
Yeah, it certainly can save over private school tuition, especially if you already have a parent who is staying home because there is a younger sibling in the house, you got a baby or toddler or something. And so you already have a parent who is stay at home. It sure beats the cost of private school tuition. We have some friends who are thinking about switching to our parent partnership because they're like, that private school tuition is so expensive I'm not going to work anyways. So, I might as well. Obviously, if you have a parent who's leaving the workforce to do that, to homeschool, then, that throws out the cost savings.
Well, and that's another thing too, that with the cost, it's, the school gets out at, I don't know, 3:00 or something.
Right.
Like, what job gets out at 3:00?
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And so then
you're
you
gonna
have to pay
for after school care, right?
And you may have to pay for before school care. We've talked about this before.
I mean, I was a latchkey kid. I don't know if that's still a term these days, but I was a latchkey kid when we back up in Michigan when I was young. My dad was off at college doing the thing, and I was essentially a stay-at-home mom. My mom worked, and she was the sole
single mom.
Single mom. Yeah, I'm sorry, the single mom, and she was the sole breadwinner essentially because my dad was off at university. And 2 kids, and my mom had to be, she had to get out of there. She had to get up to her company, and I was getting dropped off at 6 a.m. at Latchkey. I was opening the doors with these people, and then my mom would be picking us up at 6 o'clock at night. Right, so I'd be at the school for 12 hours a day because that was the only way it worked. I don't know how people work within the schedules. I mean, we've talked about this. How would we do this? Someone would have to shift their schedule so someone would be there to pick them up, and then somebody would have to drop them off, right?
Well, and I think sometimes people use the bus even just because it
get
allows
an extra hour on the road,
yeah, exactly. Depending on where you live, like we're the very first one on the bus in the morning. So, for our local school, so that our neighbors and things, they get on the bus really early and those kids are last off. So it could help out. But yeah, I mean, that's, it's a big consideration. And those before and after school programs, not only are they can be expensive, but they also can be really difficult to get into. I remember having friends in Seattle, coworkers who were like up at 4 a.m. to wait out in front of the Boys and Girls Club
to register
for the before and after school care because it was that much in demand, even though it was very expensive, but they had no other options. So
yeah, I think you'd have to use something like the Boys and Girls Club because we have that in our own town. And when we go to basketball practices or volleyball practices, parents are picking up those kids from those programs.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times the schools will bus them right there. So, I mean, it works out.
I don't even know what options there are because it's not even been a thing for us, but it's a wild thing to have to deal with.
The other thing that, speaking of childcare in general too, is the whole summer camp business. I've known several coworkers who, they work full time and they've got kids in school and they have this insane summer camp schedule of, every week it's like, okay, it's basketball this week and it's, swimming next week and it's STEM the week after. And they have this crazy schedule.
Camp,
And these camps are super expensive and they are, again, they're even more restricted than school hours. So they drop off at 9 or something and they're out at 2 or whatever. So it's really hard on parents. And they are also super competitive to get into. So benefits.
So moving on to more of like a parent satisfaction and fulfillment, there is, contrary to what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not feeling the first bullet I have, or sense of accomplishment. Not today, sir, not today.
Not today, but overall, the the wheels of homeschooling grind slowly. They grind mighty fine. They, there is an immense sense of accomplishment. For me, it's been a 4-year journey to get my kid to read, my oldest. And I tell you what, this summer has been just a revelation to watch her start reading chapter books and really feel like, oh my gosh. I told one of her teachers, the reading teacher, because my youngest is now taking the reading class that my oldest took. And I said, I told that teacher, I said, it clicked this summer. I appreciate it. And I think I attribute, some of that work is to you. Thank you very much for that. And then I said, it felt like I had this, it was like two gears and they finally, like the teeth finally locked and they've just been spinning close. Sometimes they hit and bounce off. I just felt like there's this huge Rolodex of words that my oldest knew. Like she just knew, like her really, really big vocabulary. And then all the skills of knowing what the phonics are, right? And then these two gears are just spinning and then eventually they just went click and they locked right in. And then all of a sudden she's able to see the word. And even if maybe she doesn't know all the phonics rules, because we haven't finished all about reading stuff, so there's still some phonemes that we haven't hit, she just looks at it and goes, that looks like this word in my Rolodex. And I'm able to do that association in real time. And all of a sudden she goes from decoding everything to sight reading everything. And it was just like, it was like the two things. And to feel that sense of accomplishment, it's like, oh my gosh, I can ask you to start reading everything now. Like I don't have to do all this. I don't have to feel like I'm your crutch anymore to get you through these activities. I feel like you can do it now. And that is like a huge sense of accomplishment there. It's been like a 1,200 days of reading that I've been having to go through. And it does feel like, oh my gosh, she figured it out. And I was able to get her there. It was like, I was using kind of the analogy to you that sometimes it feels like it's like a perpetual Sisyphus as opposed to the rock rolling down the hill. I feel like you're pushing it up and then you get to a ledge and then you realize there's more mountain to push it up. It's like, when am I going to get to the top of this mountain?
Right.
But, there are these, when you do feel like you're pushing and you do feel like you're working super hard and all of a sudden you see this big breakthrough, step, development, step-like motions. It's just, it does feel really good. It feels like you've accomplished something.
When I see our daughters out in public and they're talking, my parents opened a restaurant this last weekend in a couple hours away. And so we went for it. And the girls were both so personable. They were welcoming. Hello, welcome to our Nana and Papa shop. Blah, blah, blah. And they were talking with people and they were handing out menus.
Yeah, the handing out the menus was
and
fun.
And our little one was counting with me as we were chopping vegetables and doing different stuff. Anyway, it was really cool because I just really felt like, wow, like this is all working. And I did feel a big sense of pride and accomplishment too at the work that we've done. Our older daughter was reading recipes and the younger one was counting, and then just how comfortable and confident they both felt, talking to people and welcoming them. It was great. That sense of accomplishment was, because the flip side of it is if something's not working, you do take a lot of stress on yourself. But when it does work, it's like, I get all the credit because this was all me. Yeah. And so, that's fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. Going on to kind of the next one would be like this work-life integration. I think homeschooling can really give you that sense of we talked about connection, but it's also the ability to be present. Like, you get to work from home and you're not just here alone in the office and it's silent, monastery in the house, albeit that does feel like a really fun thing to do. But like at lunchtime, you get to see the kids and, they run in and show you the artwork and, like having that ability to be part of it. Like when you're coming home, you're like, I'm coming home. My kids aren't, on a bus.
Yeah.
They're not, when you leave in the morning, they're not already gone. They're sitting there, dancing and eating breakfast and singing and everything. And they're getting ready for the day and there's not a lot of stress. They're not, they're doing homeschooling in PJs. I don't allow that anymore. I know you people at home might be allowing PJ homeschool. I am starting to ask them to come to work.
They don't tend to focus. Well, the older one, she won't focus in PJs.
Put on some pants. Yeah. Pants are required here for this homeschooling.
But I do feel like it does give a great work-life balance. I'm able to work remotely a little bit, and I just feel like having them here and that flexibility that we have gives me a great. It's kind of one of those things I feel like they often say, you can't. especially for a working woman, you can't have it all. And I really feel like, wow, I kind of have it all because you're here and they're here. And so it all works with, and it works with my company and just all of it. And I just feel like, yeah, the balance is great. The ability to integrate our work and our family life is awesome.
But also like, bringing in your personal interests, like we like to do a lot of walking and hiking now. And that has become kind of something we are folding into our experience. I'm working out, and my daughters are like interested in watching daddy work out. That might be something they might want to do one day. Playing sports and being active, and doing hobbies out back, like we were talking about. A parent maybe doing a hobby or some type of home-based business. That could be something that their children become part of and share in that. Being able to like share in those experiences with them, I think
totally.
it really brings a lot of that balance. Even just, something that from the stay-at-home parent point of view, being able to have that balance as well, where the work-life balance just for a homeschooling, being the educator and also being a person, right? Being able to have that balance as well, I think is important, but also like you get that freedom with homeschooling, right? I get to be part of it, but I can also be my own person. I can go work out. I can do some hobby or whatever that might be. There's a lot of room for balance.
Yeah, I think it's true. And one of the things I love is being able to share our hobbies and passions with the kids and being able to integrate that into their education. So our older daughter particularly is very into dance, very into musicals and things. And we've been doing like a musical study. So we are reading about the background of the musical. We're watching it together. We're learning about music. And so I'm taking her. We got season tickets to the theater this year, so I can take her and do that. And I can integrate that and do something educational with it.
And she's starting a theater class now as well.
She is, yeah. And so it's really cool because we can take something that we're really passionate about and we can fold that in. You're really passionate about sports, so there's a portion of our homeschool day that you take out to, teach the kids throwing a ball and work on basketball stuff and, whatever it is. So I just think it's really cool that we have that ability to, because when they're young and it's like it's all about them and they're like, oh, play Barbies with me, whatever. As they start getting older, they can start to kind of join us, sometimes in things that we're really passionate about. I'm now able to cook with the kids, and if we weren't homeschooling, I'd get those opportunities, every once in a while on the weekends. But I certainly couldn't fold it into their education because I wouldn't have that opportunity. So I think it's, overall, we feel very fortunate that we get to pursue this life and homeschool our kids, and it's wonderful for them, but we'd be totally lying if we didn't say that it's also wonderful for us. And that's why it's funny when people say like, oh, are you thinking about sending your kids back to school at some point? Or are you thinking about whatever? And we're always kind of like, And our first thought is like, we really love our life. And it would be, at this point for us, it would be so disruptive to our lives as parents, as people, to put them in school. So we're really glad that they're loving homeschool as well, and that they love their enrichment classes they get to go to. Because for us, I mean, I don't know about you, but this lifestyle is something that I personally value so much.
Yeah, just the flexibility and the freedom, I think, is unmatched. I would be concerned, sending our daughter to, some type of traditional school for a lot of different like educational concerns, but also just her ability to, I'd worry about her, how would she handle those type of things? Because I know there's a lot of nuance in the ways she likes to learn and the way she doesn't like to learn. And I worry, like, if she gets a bad teacher, what am I going to do?
You'd be stuck.
I'm stuck, especially with these, these earlier years where it's a single teacher for all the subjects.
Yeah, and you can try to switch, but that's not always possible.
And sometimes, there's a little bit of the bureaucracy you got to go through, and there's not room for it. I heard some wild story that there's just some of the schools around our area are just so overfilled. Like some of the kids are having to just sit on chairs. They don't have a desk. I mean, it's just wild, right? And I wouldn't want that type of experience for my daughter. And so being homeschooling, I really feel like it's a situation I can predict. I know I can create a good environment. It's not that I want to coddle and make it easy. I'm definitely a steel sharpened steel type of guy. So I do want to make things challenging because I know there's a lot of meaning in struggle and fighting through hard things, and not making the fact that it's not easy is an enriching experience in and of itself. It's a cornerstone of education. Like, you need to fail sometimes. I became a physicist, and I remember failing my first AP physics test in high school and wondering, am I going to be able to be a physicist? Well, I turned out to be a pretty decent physicist, right? But I bombed my first test, and it was like terrifying, right? But that made me I said, okay, I need to recommit. I need to be better. I need to blah, blah, blah. I had a bad first year in college. I came back and, finished strong. And, those types of things really build character and whatnot. So, like, I really do feel like being able to create that type of environment where I know it's going to be character building on their respect, but also fitting to what I know they need to be successful is something that I just feel like homeschooling does. And all the things that come with it that benefit me, but also like that kind of relationship with the kids, I think is important. So,
yeah. For me, I always felt like I didn't really know what my life's purpose was. They're always like, well, what are you going to change the world? And I don't know. I never really felt like I was like, well, I'm doing a job and it's a good job, and I think we do good things for people and all that stuff, but I'm working for the weekend, right? And to have our home and our lives and, travel with you and things like that. And I never really felt like this is what I'm supposed to do necessarily. It was just keep on keeping on, right? And then we had children, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, click. This is what I'm meant to do with my life. The greatest thing that I will ever do in my whole life is raising these children. I really believe that. I will never do anything more important than that. So that's my purpose. And so for me, the ability to homeschool them just totally leans into that. If this is the greatest thing I'm ever going to do, we're going to do it the best way we can. And that's going to be, having that control and freedom to make it what they need it to be, what we as a family need it to be, because we only get one shot. And I'm so thankful that we have this as a family. I really am.
Yeah. So hopefully this episode helped you make that ultimate plunge, or if you've already been homeschooling, or,
and you're having a tough day.
And you're having a tough day like me, it reinvigorated you. Yeah. I think Matt's lying through his teeth. No, I know I'm not.
It was a long day.
It was a long day. It was just a long day. But hopefully this 2-part episode helped you make a better decision, and that's all we want to do is be able to help people make better decisions. There are no right decisions. There's just the decisions that work best for you. And hopefully you make that best decision for you and your family.
And if you want to hear the pros and cons, we've got a great episode on that. Matt will link it in the show notes because it's helpful to, the two sides of the coin. But this is the positive side. So we hope that you all enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!